repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings. My guest today is that this is a great way to describe him. He's a dweller by the wood and a magnificent dragon. I've never had a dragon in studio before. Lee Drake.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me, Scott.
My pleasure. I thought that was a great way to start it because I was like, let me, you look at someone's Facebook profile and
Sure.
say, let me try to figure out how I can, introduce this person. Nope.
Yep. No, that one was from somebody asked, what does your name mean? Lee Drake.
Oh, okay.
And that particular thing was what my name means.
Oh, cool. In what? In different languages or
just
what?
like the origins of the word Lee and the word Drake. Yeah.
That's very
cool. There's
cool.
various ways you could go about that. Of course,
Sure.
Drake could also mean a duck. So,
Right, but
I picked the dragon. It was more fun.
Yeah, I would do that as well. I think a magnificent duck just
That's
doesn't.
right. Yeah, it just doesn't
do it. Well, I'm glad to have you here. I know zero about you, but when I was trolling for Blather guests, a couple of our mutual friends tagged you in it and said, Lee Drake. I see your name pop up on a lot of comments and things like that. And we have a lot of mutual friends. So I was like, he looks like a cool guy. Let's talk.
Sure.
So that's what we're here to blather about. You're a tech guy? Is that?
Well, yes.
Yeah, I see from your Facebook profile, you've got your hands in a lot of different things.
I do. My main job is as president of OS Cubed, which is a business I started doing IT work. So we do technical support for mostly Microsoft systems as well as software development on those same systems. So we do a lot of big websites as well as supporting computers, whether it's a single person at home with their own computer or a big company with lots of computers and servers and that. We do a lot of cloud work, so we're doing a lot more in the cloud these days, Office 365 and Azure and things like that. So that's sort of my everyday work. I'm pretty passionate in terms of the company itself about building a team and having a culture. Pretty much all of my employees have been with me for the 15 years we've been in business.
How many employees do you have?
And I have 4 employees and myself. I work in the business. I'm not, one of those owners that sits at home and collects a check.
Yes, I know what that's like.
I do as much IT support, not so much development. I mostly do specifications and project management on the development side. My developers are way better at that than I am, and my tech support guy is pretty darn good at what he does. So. We tried to build a company that's based mostly around the idea that everybody loves what they're doing and likes working with each other and likes working as a team. I like what's called DISC. Have you ever heard of DISC?
Yes.
Okay, so
I've
DISC is
had my DISC training, my
DISC profile. Just for those who may not have heard of it, there's 4 pieces. D is decision making. So a high D is somebody who's more comfortable giving direction, and a low D is somebody more comfortable with getting it. I is the inspiration or the gift of gab. Obviously, I'm a high I. But it's whether you're more comfortable and energized by groups, sort of introvert, extrovert kind of a thing. A low I is going to be more of an introvert. A high I is going to be more of an extrovert. S, it stands for something that I always forget because I always think of it as the worker bee quotient. A high S is somebody who gains satisfaction from doing similar tasks over and over well. A low S is like, oh, look, a butterfly. They're a little more distractible. They need more more of a I guess I'd call it a variety of work.
Yeah.
And then C is high C is someone who's very detail oriented. and low C, I call it calculator mode, is somebody who's more big picture. Every company needs someone in all those categories, top and bottom of each of those scales. So we have built a company where we have that. We have really good balance of people within that. And that means that no matter what the problem is or no matter what the trouble is, we can always sort of overcome it and make it happen. And it's been a pleasure to come into work every day for 15 years.
That's amazing to hear. I'm just, while you were talking, I was just trying to look up my disc profile that I did. Mm-hmm. I've never been able to remember what I'm a high I and a high S.
All right. So that makes sense.
Low D and a low, and kind of a lowish C.
C. Yeah. I'm a high DI, low SC.
And I don't think when I took this, I think that my profile would change since I've taken this.
Yeah, it'll change a little bit. I mean, as you age and progress and grow and stuff, your disc profile can change some. Mine started out a little bit lower on the D side, and as I sort of grew into the idea of being a leader and stuff, that sort of pushed that number up a little bit.
That's what I feel like mine would be. I think my D would rise a little bit. Just my own experiences running my own business and, kind of running a production, a movie production and that kind of thing.
Right.
And, having to deal with teams and run people and stuff like that. That's been something that I haven't really, I had a lot of experience in the past, but over the last maybe 10 years, I've been more of a kind of a on my own worker bee kind of guy,
sure, and
not really having a team to worry about. So, how would you describe your management style? Like, what would you say your leadership style is?
Well, a high DI tends to be what they call an inspirational leader, right? So, somebody who's more about establishing the culture and not directing the people. I fit into the company in a sales role and in a project definition role, customer service, basically working with customers directly. Mm-hmm. Some of my employees are lower I's and don't feel as comfortable working directly with customers, so I'll fill that gap. But I don't really direct day-to-day activities. Well, other than the idea of saying, oh, well, this looks like a task that you might be, better suited for. Right. That looks like a task you might be better suited for. I don't micromanage anything. And as a result, the pandemic stuff, it was a strain on the culture, but it wasn't, even though we were all working from home for the last year, we're only now starting to go back to the office. It wasn't as big a stress as I thought it might be.
That's good.
Yeah. Everybody's pretty much a self-starter. So as long as the work was still flowing in and I could keep everybody busy,
right.
It kept everything going pretty good, I think.
I like the idea of, you stressed the culture in your company.
Right.
And how if you have the right culture and you set up the right people, it's just going to sort of evolve naturally and it's going to kind of run itself in a lot of ways.
Right. And, it's interesting. This is my second company. So my first company I had with a partner, and that was a quite successful company. We did a good job together. He was more on the sales end and I was more on the operations end of things at the time, although we were equal partners. But we both had family involved in the business and both of us kind of at some point had taken some CEO training and stuff. Neither of us had any formal business training or leadership training. And we'd both taken some leadership and business training and decided that we needed to go in different directions. Even though the company was going well from a financial point of view, mm-hmm. We wanted to sort of have two different goals, I think, for where we were going with things. And
interesting.
One of my goals was more focused on that, right? More focused on the culture and hiring the right people and working together as a team. His goals were more involved with, closing sales and making money and all of that, without really looking at those other pieces, those other aspects of it. And it was getting to the point where I was coming into work every day kind of dreading work instead of looking forward to it, you know? And I think he was probably feeling the same way for different reasons. So we ended up splitting the company. We split up assets, and some of the employees went with him and some of the employees went with me. And it all actually worked out really well for both of us. You know, fine for him. He's off doing his thing. I'm doing my thing. We haven't even run into each other very much from a competitive point of view.
Well, that's cool.
Just because sort of the different focuses of where we ended up heading. So.
Yeah. When my partner Steve Miller and I created Rockvox, one of the things that we had in the sort of corporate I don't know, goal or the structure of it, and what we wanted to do was be successful enough so that we could really do a lot of community engagement and work in the community and, you know, sponsor things and be like, hey, we made this happen, and, you know, help bring other people things that they couldn't get on their own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, life's about experiences, right? And it's also about giving. It's about, you know, getting out there and doing things for other people. You know, you said that in looking at me, you had seen, you know, my comments all over the place and things like that. That's because I'm a super connector, right? I'm the kind of person who, you know, connects with a lot of different other people, not only here in Rochester, but all over the world. The demographics that I interact with are, I think, much broader than a lot of people, right? I work with kids down to the high school level and adults, you know, way older than I am and retired. I have people who are my original high school science teacher on my Facebook list. I have, you know, people that I went to college with, and I'm very involved with a bunch of other things outside of work. And I wanted to be sure that when I designed my company, that I would have time to do all those things, and that my employees would have time to do the things that they wanted to do, the things that they were passionate about, over and above, you know, programming or tech support or whatever it is. So, you know, some people call companies like mine a lifestyle company, and I would say that's true. You know, the company is designed around everyone in the company having a great lifestyle for them.
And, you know, I think the pandemic has made maybe a lot of companies who weren't lifestyle companies realize, because they were forced into being some sort of a lifestyle company, right? Giving people having to work from home, and their schedules being more flexible and things like that. I think when they got a taste of that, they were like, hey, how many times have you heard that productivity went way up during the pandemic, even though everybody's home?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think a lot of companies are starting to go, hey, this whole lifestyle thing isn't, you know, they were making fun of it before.
Right.
And now they're like, this is kind of cool. Plus, we don't have to pay for an office.
Yeah. Well, and I think the retail or the commercial real estate sector is probably the next one to get hit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, you know, who have offices, and who may have felt that they didn't need an office, they're still stuck in leases. But once those leases are up, there may well be a glut of real estate on the market. On the other hand, you know, I think, you know, the conclusion that we all came to within my company was that we prefer working together. We prefer literally sitting down in an office together and being able to pop our head over the partition and say, hey, you know, what's going on with this? Or can you take a look over my shoulder at this code or whatever it is? We missed that. We ended up, you know, at first we were doing sort of casual meetings when something happened and we needed to talk about it. And pretty soon we realized we needed more regular positive interaction with each other. So we've been doing at least weekly meetings, company Zoom meetings on a regular basis. And we interact in Teams and other collaboration tools a lot. The companies that we worked for, many of them also went, you know, completely virtual, or at least hybrid virtual, for a long time. And the great thing was that the technology stack that we use and sell made that super easy. We were very busy for about 3 or 4 weeks helping clients move things to offsite and be able to VPN in from home and do their work. And then things kind of trailed off from that point of view because everybody was up and running pretty quick. No new hardware needed, no new software needed, just kind of doing some configuration and away they went. So that was gratifying. It was nice to have customers call me up instead of saying, everything's not working, and saying, oh my God, we couldn't have done this without you. You know?
Yeah, that's always
the white knight piece. You know?
That always feels good. That always feels great.
But yeah, I think it's definitely changed employers' outlook on where things are and how accepting they are of people being able to work from home and do their work from home. We've always been that way. If a employee said, hey, I got to stay home because my kid's got to go to the doctor or whatever, it's like, okay, fine, stay home, whatever. Because we could always dial in and do our work from anywhere. And all I cared about was whether the work got done, not when they did it.
Right. Right.
So.
I think there's a lot of people who wish they worked for you or worked with you.
I do get my share of people who are interested.
So going back to, your business split into two other businesses and you took one, your partner took the other. When that first happened, what was it like setting goals for this new sort of environment in your company? Like what kind of goals did you set right off the bat when you started that?
Sure. So, I mean, the split itself was somewhat contentious and, I think any business split is very similar to a divorce from an emotional point of view, right? But coming out of it, I think the number one goal I had was that, and I already said it, that everybody would enjoy coming into work every day, right? That they would enjoy doing what they do and having fun with whatever it was that challenged them and made them feel good about themselves. The company itself has a profit sharing model. So when the company makes money, all my employees make money. And I mean, they all make money anyways, everybody gets paid.
Sure.
But if the company's doing well, they will get a bonus and that works out great because it helps to motivate people to, kind of get out there and make sure their hours are in and their timesheets are filled out and their billing is up there. But the other thing I wanted customers to have a great relationship with me. I have customers today that I service remotely for the most part these days, but I have customers today that when I started out in the computer industry in 1982 were my customers. They bought Apple IIs from me.
I had an Apple IIc. That was my first computer.
Right. So, and it was for a lot of people, right? At least in our age groups.
Yeah, right.
But I have had customers who have followed me through, companies I worked for as well as the companies I owned. And I wanted those customers to continue to follow us and to continue to feel like they were getting a good relationship with my company. My company has an approach of being collaborative, right? With them, we're not there to bill hours. We're not there to be, to sell them things. We're there to make sure that their business processes go well and that they have all the IT they need to make that happen, that they're protected, that they're secure, that they don't have, problems with the actual hardware or the software or anything else. So it's real, and it's a long term, right? I've had customers who are on their fourth or fifth or sixth generation of servers that we have, upgraded over the years in place. And in some cases, they've migrated completely to the cloud. They don't have any servers at all that they own. So it was about the employee experience. It was about the customer experience. And to some extent about the vendor experience, selecting the right vendors. One of the things that we tried to do in my last company was to be everything to everybody, to do every kind of work that was out there that was IT related. And I felt like we were kind of losing focus because IT is very complex and all the pieces have to fit together nicely for it to all work well. And when you try to support everything that's out there, you can only do kind of a half-assed job at all of it. So part of what we did over the last 15 years was we narrowed our stack down to specific products that we recommend and that we put in place that all work well together and that we can all monitor right on the web. So I can log into a website and I can see whose backups worked and didn't work, whether their networks are up or down, what their server statuses are, what their cloud status is, if they're having issues with logins, all of that just sort of on screens that we can monitor. Unlike a lot of MSPs, though, we don't go to the extent of just having a random call center that you call into. Everybody has everybody else's cell phone numbers. My customers all have cell phone numbers and direct contact numbers for us so that they can get directly in touch with us. If
I think that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, these days, the call center in India is not unusual, or the Philippines, or anywhere else. We really felt that we wanted to keep a personal touch to the support end of things. And we know that rules us out of some sales. There are customers who just want they just want the cheapest thing they can get. And, as long as stuff is marginally fine, they're good with it.
Right, right.
But we wanted more of the high-end service experience rather than that generic service experience.
That's interesting. So you chose a certain kind of customer.
Yeah. Being able to choose your customer is actually pretty important.
Yeah, it is. That's very good.
To overall happiness, I guess. I mean, if I was less picky about clients, then I probably would make more money. But money's not as important as the long-term relationship.
You'd probably have more stress too, and you'd be worried a lot more, and things would be crazy. And
I've fired customers. If a customer calls up and yells at one of my employees for something, I'll see you. Bye. Don't need you. Now customers will call up frustrated or angry with their hardware or whatever, and that's fine. We can calm them down and get everything fixed and get everything back up and running. Yeah. But don't abuse my employees because you will rapidly find yourself without support.
So the customer is always right, only goes so far.
Correct. Yeah. That's correct. And I'm not saying that we're always right, because we're not. Everybody makes mistakes. And I'm not saying that a customer can't be angry at us. That's fine too, because that happens, not very often, but it does happen. And sometimes it's justified, right? Sometimes it's like, yeah, you're right. We screwed up. And in that case, let's figure out what the best path forward is, whether that's us continuing to do business but changing how things work, or not continuing to do business. Yeah. And that's all okay as long as we can discuss it in a reasonable way.
Sure. Owning up to something is
absolutely. You have to when you mess up, you got to say I messed up. And that's another thing, within our company that we all do too. It's like, yeah, I screwed that one up, that was my fault, but we're not looking at fault. We're looking at how do we make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
We had a thing the other day where somebody made some change in a configuration at our cage, which is where all our websites and things are hosted. And the next month I got a bill. And that bill was $2,200 more than the bill I was expecting. Oops. Something had happened with the bandwidth, and we had downloaded a whole bunch of stuff at the cage that we didn't realize we were downloading. The result of that was that I got charged for over bandwidth, similar to if you over bandwidth on your Verizon account or something. The person who did the configuration was like very apologetic and stuff. And then we looked at it deeper, and it turned out it might not have been that. We still don't know exactly what happened because our vendor, the ISP that provides us with bandwidth, could only give us kind of what the total bandwidth was, not what was in it.
Yeah.
And by the time we found out, it was too late for our monitoring tools to go back and look at why that was happening. But in any case, nobody was to blame, it wasn't that it was somebody's fault. It was like, okay, well, let's just make sure we don't run up a $2,200 bill again.
Right.
And I think that's, that being able to say I screwed up, without repercussion, without somebody giving you a hard time about it, instead of working to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's invaluable. That's the kind of environment you want to be in. That's the kind of environment people want to have.
Sure.
at a work thing. So, but that's probably enough about work. Let's talk about something else.
Passion.
Let's talk about passion.
Passion. What are you passionate about?
So let's see. What am I passionate about? So if you looked at my Facebook page, you probably got the idea that it's like, oh, look, a butterfly. I am passionate about coffee. You can see that the T-shirt I'm wearing here is actually a La Pavoni coffee machine, which is the kind of espresso machine I have at home. I've been fascinated about all the different ways of making coffee. I have probably a dozen different ways of making coffee.
Really?
AeroPresses and Chemexes and espresso machines and drip and...
Are French presses really that good, or are they overhyped?
They're the worst.
That's funny.
And there are scientific reasons why they're the worst, actually. When you think about espresso, right? Espresso is sort of concentrated coffee. It's the most concentrated. Well, not exactly. There are a few that are similar, like Turkish coffee.
I love Turkish coffee.
Yeah. But they're using very fine grounds to make the coffee, and then forcing water through those grounds. So if you think about that, what's happening there is that you are exposing the most water to the most coffee that way, because you have really tiny particles, and you're forcing the water through those particles. French press is the exact opposite of that. You have very coarse grounds, and you just kind of pour the water in and hope it all mixes, and then squeeze the grounds out the bottom.
So why are people always talking about, I have a French press, look at that?
Right. So I think part of it is that it's a super easy way to make coffee, right? You don't need a fancy grinder that can do, very, very fine particles. You just kind of put a couple of tablespoons in there and throw the hot water in, and you're good to go. It's a nice presentation, I have to say. And I have a French press. I mostly use it for making infusions for soup. But that's okay. It is a nice way to sort of present coffee, right? You bring it out with the coffee grounds in it, and then the customer gets to lower the little basket when it's time, and pour the coffee and stuff. So it's a nice presentation. And
for people who like to look at coffee being made but not really appreciate the
Well, there are all sorts of really fun ways to present coffee, but I like it from a restaurant point of view, right? It also makes a nice weak cup of coffee. Right. And a lot of people don't like a strong flavor in their coffee. Yeah. They want something that's a little weaker. It also is very tolerant of bad coffee. If you have coffee grounds that are several weeks old, or a bag of beans you opened weeks ago, and you make French press out of it, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference between that and something that just came out, of the bag.
See, now I know why you declined my offer for coffee, our donut shop.
From the donut shop thing, yes.
So we don't go through enough coffee to necessitate. I do have a cappuccino machine out there.
I am a strong supporter of all the local coffee scene. Rochester has a wonderful local coffee scene, lots of third wave coffee makers. It all sort of started with Joe Bean Coffee, and they roast their own as well as serving coffee. But from that original bar, the original Joe Bean bar, the baristas and the roasters and the other people that have worked there and then moved on to other jobs have opened up some amazing shops all over Rochester, some of which roast, some of which just pour, some do both. But all of them have sort of adopted more sort of high-end coffee. And it's possible in Rochester to get some pretty awesome coffee, where 10 years ago you would have gone to your local diner and that's about the best coffee you'd get. Right. So that's been fun. But for me, what happened was once I bought the La Pavoni, or actually it was given to me as a gift by my wife and my family. Once I got into that and I started doing it, I realized I needed to learn how to use it, because a lever machine is very different from, your cappuccino machine where you push a button and a cappuccino comes out.
I'm looking at the schematic on your shirt. It looks very complex. It looks like something out of Star Wars, like it's a droid or something. And
this is sort of it's all blown out, right?
Yeah.
But basically a lever machine is actually relatively simple from a mechanic's point of view. It's got a boiler, and it's got a pressure stat that measures the pressure inside the boiler. At least the later ones do. Older ones didn't. They had a different way of doing it. But once it comes up to pressure, you'll warm up the group head, which is the part that the water pours through. And then you lock your coffee in, you lift the lever, the water pours into the group head, you pull the lever down, and the coffee comes out the bottom. There's more steps to it than that. I'm not going to get into all the details because I'm kind of fanatic about it. But it takes a bit of finesse. You need to learn how best to grind the coffee. Is the coffee better finer ground or coarser ground? How much coffee do you put in there? How many grams of coffee go into that basket to make the best cup? And I found out that I really knew nothing about it. So the first thing I did was I hired a local barista to come in for an afternoon, and the two of us made coffee all afternoon. And he showed me,
That's awesome.
If you put in this kind of a dose, here's how that changes the taste. If you grind it this way, this is how that changes the taste. And we looked at my grinder and figured out the best way to get my grinder to do what it needed to do for the coffee. I later upgraded that, but by then I knew what I wanted. So that was a good start, but there's just so many little factors to play with that I still needed help. So I got onto a Facebook group for the La Pavoni espresso machine, and it was just the most fabulous community. There were people all over the world with these. They've been around for decades. Since I think the 60s or 50s. So there are very old machines. There are newer machines. There are machines with all sorts of different technologies. It's got a great modder community out there. There are people who add dials and temperature feedback and all sorts of crazy things to them, make them look prettier by making new handles and things for them.
Wow.
Even 3D printing things for them. So I got involved with this community. And the next thing I knew, I had friends all over the world. I have friends in Japan. I have friends in Croatia. I have friends in Italy, many of whom I have made through this group. And some of them I've gone and met. I've met a couple of my friends in Japan that I met through the group. And that was quite fun. I've met some folks in Italy, had coffee with a guy in Croatia, just random people that I met through the group from all sorts of different cultures and backgrounds, all of whom have the same sort of passion about coffee.
How did you get involved in coffee this way? When did you learn about your passion for coffee?
Well, actually, that's kind of interesting too. When I was in my 40s, I was playing paintball, and I tried out for a professional paintball team.
Oh.
And I ended up off to the hospital in an ambulance because I had an AFib episode.
Oh dear, not fun.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that.
That was the end of my paintball career. After the AFib episode, they put me on some meds and stuff, which pretty much put it under control. However, they also told me I had to limit my caffeine intake. So when you were offering me coffee, I was like, yeah, I've had my 2 because that's all I get a day. So I said to myself, well, if I can only have, X amount of caffeine a day.
Make it count.
Exactly. I'm going to make sure it's the best dang caffeine I can ingest. And at that time, it was kind of at the same time that this third wave coffee thing was starting to come in. So I started to get into pour overs and vacuum extraction coffee and a bunch of other different ways of doing coffee. And eventually sort of got onto this tack of doing espressos. And my family was nice enough to buy me an espresso machine to do that with. And I had researched ahead of time which one I wanted, because I wanted one that wasn't just an automatic push button one. I wanted one where I had some specific control over it.
You needed a degree to operate, basically.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't want the machine making decisions for me. I do that all day, every day with my computers. I wanted one where I was making the decisions.
That's
and
really
then I could repair
fascinating.
myself. I can repair anything in that machine. I've
Really?
stripped it down. I've put new gaskets in it. I've
Wow.
done all that stuff. So.
I've never heard of anyone doing that. That's fantastic. I'm sure it's not anything new either. I'm just not,
Well, again, part of it's that community, right? That community that I'm on Facebook, people post a video of here's how you strip it down. Here's how you change this type of gasket. Here's the differences between this kind of machine and that kind of machine. Right. I now actually have two, one at work and one at home.
Yeah, that's when you know.
Yeah.
When you got one at home and at work. So I guess I have to ask you, what is your favorite coffee?
I don't have one. However,
what is your favorite now?
Right. So, probably the best one I've had recently was the Ederleth coffee, which is out of Joe Bean's Roasters. Joe Bean's is literally a mile from my house, and I buy most of my coffee there. They tend to roast a little bit lighter roasts. You know, people think of, oh, well, I want a dark roast coffee. Well, that doesn't mean anything because it's how dark the roast is, but also what the original beans were and all sorts of other things. I tend to like Ethiopian coffees.
I like
which are the tend to be sort of a lighter, fruitier sort of flavor to them.
So I don't know how good it is on the spectrum of good or bad coffee, but the only coffee that we drink at home is the Ethiopian that we buy at Wegmans.
Right.
Now, I've never tried to buy Ethiopian anywhere else because I never go anywhere else.
Sure.
But I would definitely love to try different.
Do you have a grinder?
Yeah.
So you buy beans and grind them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say just try. There's a bunch of different places in town that do their own roasting. Try that. And the reason I recommend trying that as opposed to, say, the Wegmans stuff, not that the Wegmans stuff is bad, because I've bought like Intelligentsia coffee and things like that from them. But coffee that's roasted locally and roasted recently is going to taste a lot better.
Yeah.
For every day that a coffee bean sits in a bag or ages or sits after the bag's open, it gets a little bit less good. You're going to find that if you take a bag that was roasted, say, last week, and you grind that, you're going to get a very nice crema out of it when you prepare it, however you do prepare it. You're going to get a more general taste of all the flavors in the coffee instead of a very specific taste of one flavor. And especially in dark roasts. Dark roasts tend to be a little bit more burnt. And again, that's a factor of the quality of the beans they start with.
So like,
the more dark it is, the less it matters what the original beans were. You know?
So like somebody got me I drink my coffee black.
Okay. Yeah. Same as I.
So, and someone got me Starbucks, just regular Americano or whatever it is. And I couldn't stand it. I didn't like it. It was gross. It was way too bitter and burnt was the word I've been using for years. I'm like, I don't like
correct.
it. Taste burnt.
In the La Pavoni community, we call that cha bucks. Yes, because they tend to overdo their coffee. And they have recently sort of realized that not everybody likes burnt coffee, or that not everybody buys their coffee with like 18 gallons of dairy and this much coffee in the bottom, you know? I think they've kind of come to the realization that that's not the only way to make coffee. They actually made, pretty amazingly, and they put this into businesses. They made a full machine that does pour over coffees. That will actually grind the beans, put them in
just one machine that does all that
one machine.
stuff.
You basically say, I want a pour over coffee, and it'll make it the same way as if you were using the a V60 and the spout, but it's all automated. They have a ribbon that has all the filters on it and everything. I was actually at a client site when they were putting one in, and the guy showed me the inside of it, and it was pretty amazing, you know.
What a fascinating modern age we live in.
But it takes all of the personal skill out of it, right? It's like you push a button like you do with your thing, and out comes a pour over coffee. You don't need a barista for that. All you need is somebody that can push the button.
No, you know? So that's bad.
Well, no, not necessarily. Not all automation is bad. If you need a quick cup of coffee and you don't care about having to put together a kettle and put it on the stove and everything else, fine. You know, I don't have a problem with that. I don't care how people make their coffee. I like good coffee, and that wasn't bad coffee. The coffee that it made was pretty decent. and it was consistent, right? That's the other thing. I mean, you look at
It's the same every
McDonald's, you
time.
look at Burger King, you look at Starbucks, you look at any of those places. It doesn't matter where in the world you go, it's going to taste the same, right? It's pretty much going to be the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they all run on the same formula, the same
Yeah.
products, the same source. Everything is the same. So they're all about consistency, and you're not going to get that in the kind of coffee experience that I have.
Wow, your whole description for coffee is a great metaphor for life, I think. Mm-hmm. I think could you create some sort of a metaphor for your life based on how you make coffee?
Be focused, even if you don't have any caffeine in you yet. I don't know. I mean,
Do you ever drink decaf?
Yes, actually, I do. Because I can only do 2 a day.
Yeah.
I do sometimes enjoy an affogato, which is basically espresso over ice cream.
Oh,
So you basically just pull your shot right into a cup of ice cream and have it. Different types of ice cream are great, but frankly, vanilla and chocolate are pretty darn good. I've even had it with lemon sorbet. And because I'm doing that in the evening and I don't want to be up all night and overdo the caffeine end of things, I will occasionally do a decaf.
a decaf.
Yeah, I've got a small bin of Intelligentsia or Joe Bean Azhara decaf that I will occasionally tap into.
I honestly didn't know that you were going to go down the coffee route. I know that from the perusing I did on your Facebook page, it was like, cooking and like I saw a lot of cooking things.
So cooking is also a huge passion of mine. Part of that is due to dietary restrictions. I'm somewhat diabetic, so I need to kind of watch my carbs. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to cook for yourself and not to take prepackaged meals, but cook for yourself. I also came from a pretty big family. I had 4 brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad were both working teachers. So we all took turns making dinner. And as a result, we all kind of inherited that love of food. My brothers and sisters are very similar to me from that point of view.
You could call yourself a foodie?
I would, yeah, absolutely. I've eaten at some pretty amazing restaurants and made some pretty amazing dinners and things from time to time. I've actually got a smoker coming soon. I ordered a wood pellet smoker.
Yeah. I know. My brother just got one he's had one for a couple of years, but I see him posting about it every once in a while.
So I'm looking forward to playing with that. I have sous vide equipment. I have Instant Pot. I have a ton of cast iron. I have some beautiful Japanese knives. I'm very into Japanese knives. This comes back to the whole, look, a butterfly thing, right? My wife counts on her, multiple fingers and toes, all the various hobbies I've had or have at the moment or in the future or in the past. Cooking is very much the same way as making coffee, right? It's knowing the basics and understanding the science behind it and then riffing off of that. And to me, cooking is my sort of post-work zen. Coffee is my pre-work zen and cooking's my post-work zen. So I have some time on either end of my day to spend doing something that I can be focused on that is not work and is not, necessarily what most people would call something productive, but it's creative and fun and interesting and has a lot of steps to it that you can tweak and modify and see how this works and see how that works. And my poor wife gets to be my guinea pig, and most of the time that's a good thing. But every once in a while, it's like maybe we should order pizza. But yeah, I really enjoy cooking, and again, that's something that has developed into a Facebook community. I'm in a community called Food Club. And it's mostly people like me who enjoy cooking at home. There's a surprising number of men in that. I think cooking is something that men have sort of gotten back into after years of stupid gender roles where the woman does the cooking in the house and all of that, men have realized, hey, that's kind of fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, it can be for sure.
When my wife, her job ended at the end of December, she had a job at the U of R doing editing for a scientific journal. And that ended in December. And we were sort of reapportioning chores and things like that because she had more free time. And she said, well, do you want me to cook more meals? And I was like, no, I really like that. It's for, like I said, for me, it's my sort of end of day zen. I go home and I make a meal and do some photography on it. I take pictures of pretty much all the things I make. Although I missed the other night, but whatever. And again, that's sort of part of the community thing. I have a group of people that I share recipes with and I share techniques with, and we buy a cookbook, and the next thing you know, everybody else has the same cookbook because they're like, wow, that looks great. My wife actually made a rule that if I bought a new physical cookbook as opposed to one on a Kindle or something, that I had to get rid of a cookbook because we don't have any more room for cookbooks.
That's funny. That's funny.
So, every once in a while I have to curate my collection.
Yeah.
But I pass them along to other people in my group, so it's all good. And then gaming is the other thing that I really enjoy, whether that's board gaming or computer gaming or whatever. When my wife and I were in college, I had an Apple II, and one of the other people in my dorm was the guy who developed the original Wizardry game for the Apple II. And we were playtesters. We would get the latest build of it and put it on our Apple and try things out and see if we could break stuff and tell them what, our feedback was on how fun it was to play and things like that. And we've been involved in computer gaming ever since. My wife and I both game. Our current fun game that we like to play together is Guild Wars 2. But we've played other MMORPGs or MMOs or even just standalone games or one-person games.
Your house sounds like a really cool place to hang out.
It was up until a year ago when we couldn't invite anybody over. But we also like board gaming and stuff too. So we would get together, my son and his wife and my wife and I and our best friends would get together every Monday night and do some board gaming and stuff like that, or role-playing games.
Very cool.
But we, again, haven't done that for a while. But that'll all come back. Everybody's getting vaxxed now.
I foresee some sort of incredible, week of fun at the Drake household. Cooking and coffee and games. Oh, my.
I think that is going to happen for sure.
We should call the press.
There you go. No, probably not.
No, probably not? All right. Gotcha. So where can people find you if they wanted to look into maybe using your services and computers and things like that?
I'm at www.os-cubed.com. OS Cubed is the company, and it's all about, as I said, computer support, but in the Microsoft. So if it's anything to do with Microsoft stuff, definitely check us out, www.os-cubed.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming and blathering with me. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Now I want a cup of coffee, but
there
a good cup.
I'll have you over sometime. You can have a cup.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thanks for coming.
Awesome.